All right, welcome to this explainer. Let's jump right in, because today we are looking at something that is just incredibly fascinating. We're going to explore how classical spiritual wisdom can actually, and I mean literally, cure that exhausting, refreshing your feed every 5 seconds digital anxiety. We live in this era where basically all our actions are measured, quantified, and just put on display for the whole world to see. But what actually happens to our inner peace when we tie our self-worth to those metrics? Well, today we're unpacking some really profound insights from a classical text known as the 20th Flash, which tackles the absolute root of this exact problem.
So to kick things off, I want you to really think about a simple question. And honestly, we've all been there before. You post something, a photo, a huge accomplishment, maybe just a thought, and the likes just don't come. Do you feel that tiny little pang of disappointment? Like that sudden little drop in your stomach? It is such a universally understood modern experience. But ask yourself honestly, if those likes, those little digital pats on the back, never existed at all in the first place, would you still share the exact same thing, in the exact same way? It's a tough introspective question, right? Because it directly challenges our core motivations. It essentially forces us to look in the mirror and ask, who are we actually performing for?
Which brings us to what we can call the digital dilemma. And it is incredibly relatable. We put our work, our thoughts, our art out into the world, and our ego immediately, almost reflexively, starts craving that external social reward. But that anxiety of constantly chasing social media validation, it just sets us up for continuous disappointment, mostly because we're handing over the keys to our happiness to an entirely unpredictable audience. We're effectively telling ourselves that our effort only has value if a crowd acknowledges it. And honestly, that is just an exhausting way to live.
Now this is where the scholar Said Nursi comes in. He identifies the root of this spiritual sickness and offers what he calls the first cure. And let me tell you, this cure is pretty radical for today's world. His solution? Becoming completely indifferent to people's approval. I know, it sounds almost impossible, right? But the fascinating paradox here is that Nursi doesn't frame this as, losing connection with people or just retreating into a cave. Not at all. He frames it as a massive gain in personal freedom. By cutting those invisible strings that tie our self-worth to public applause, we are actively protecting our own inner sincerity.
When you actually unpack the text from the 20th Flash, the language he uses is just striking. Nursi writes that a person attains sincerity by valuing truth over their own ego, by holding to the secret that, quote, my reward comes from God alone, and by remaining unmoved by whatever material or social reward might come from others. Just think about the sheer power of that phrase, remaining unmoved. It means your internal compass is so firmly set on the truth, and on this much higher ultimate reward, that a massive surge of social praise doesn't suddenly make you arrogant, and a complete lack of attention doesn't make you depressed. True sincerity means realizing, at your core, that your ultimate reward just doesn't come from a digital audience.
And he brilliantly illustrates the second half of this insight by pointing out something that is so crucial. He says that whether people accept your service, whether it leaves a good impression, whether it wins their favor, all of that is God's gift to give. It's not your job to chase it or expect it. What a totally liberating concept. The actual results of our actions, the way they are received by the public, are entirely out of our hands. It's just not our job to chase favor. He explains that knowing this maintains our sincerity. But the second we forget it, the moment we start optimizing our lives just to win the crowd's approval, we destroy the very sincerity that made our work valuable in the first place.
Now, what's incredibly fascinating is how perfectly this classical philosophy maps straight onto today's modern digital culture. Think about it. Doing something just to get likes fundamentally shifts your energy. You essentially turn into a salesperson for your own ego. But doing something because it's right, because it has true intrinsic value, that protects the purity of your work. The underlying motivation literally changes everything, even if the outward action looks exactly the same to someone watching.
So let's synthesize this. How does this build into something practical for our daily lives? Well, it means we have to re-anchor our motivations in a higher truth. And here is the really reassuring beauty of this entire approach. It definitely doesn't mean you can't enjoy success. Not at all. If you do something because it's right and the likes happen to come, that is absolutely fine. Enjoy it. But if they don't come, the intrinsic value of your work hasn't diminished by a single fraction of a percent. Why? Because that external validation was never the actual point to begin with. You become totally insulated from the unpredictable roller coaster of public opinion.
And our source material grounds this concept even further by pointing to the absolute ultimate example of this mindset. The Quran actually ties this attitude to the mission of the highest spiritual figures, the messengers themselves. Surah An-Nur states, quote,
The duty of the messenger is only to convey the message clearly. This is profound. I mean, even individuals tasked with the most monumental spiritual missions in human history were only responsible for the effort of conveying the message. They were not held responsible for controlling the outcome or forcing the crowd to applaud. Their duty was simply the effort. The result was entirely up to God.
Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. I want to leave you with a question that acts as a real, true litmus test for sincerity. The next time you're about to share something or build something or help someone out, just pause for a second and ask yourself, would I put in this exact same effort if no one ever noticed? If your answer is yes, then you've found something truly worth doing. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer today, and I really hope this helps you find a little more peace and a whole lot more sincerity in your own digital and physical worlds.